happenings, where we're going to talk about things that happen, whether we like them or
Or
not.
not.
And one day we'll get to that. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about homeschooling myth versus reality. Okay. My name is Jessica Stone. I am a photographer and I have homeschooled most of my children all of their lives. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Whitley, and I started homeschooling when it was illegal and homeschooled most of my kids for all of their life.
All right. And our little guest over here, I mean, not little, sorry. I shouldn't ever comment on height. I just say little all the time. Could you introduce yourself and a little bit about your homeschooling length of time?
Okay, my name is Gwen, and I homeschooled for over 20 years.
She did. And I've known her for most of them. So, yes. All right. So, today we're going to be talking about common misconceptions about homeschooling, which, I mean, if you're sitting at home and you've never done it before, you might have some thoughts of what you think that it is. We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about what led us to try homeschooling, because all of us have a bit different. Would you agree, Gwen, that you had a different start moment than maybe I did as well?
Yes, like the origin story, yes.
Yes, your origin. And then we're going to talk about some of our experiences as we got started. And this is actually going to be a 3-part series. So this way, if you're considering doing it, this might inspire you to give it a try and not be so intimidated. But before we begin, it's my favorite part to ask our would you rather. So for the woman that complains at all times about giving easy questions, we're going to give it to Whitley. Whitley, please ask your question, but tell us who you're directing the question to.
Oh, I'll just direct it to you.
Ah, yes. Okay. What is it?
Would I rather perform science experiments or read about science experiments?
I can tell you that I do not enjoy technical books. So anything that deals with power tools and potential explosions, I'm in. I would like to perform science experiments. Did that surprise you, Whitley?
No.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Not either.
Gwen, why don't you ask your question while I find mine?
Okay, so I'll ask Whitley.
Okay.
Would you rather have every subject in the same classroom or different subjects in different rooms?
Whoa.
Different subjects in different rooms. I feel like that going from room to room, you can kind of switch gears from this subject to that subject.
All right, so you prefer more of a change of pace.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so Gwynley, would you rather go to school with a rip in your shirt or hole in your shoe? And I'm not going to tell you where the rips are at.
A hole in my shoe, I would think.
Oh, okay. Can you explain why?
I don't know where the rip in my shirt is. If the rip is on my stomach, no. I would rather expose my toes.
I need to ask you one more time.
Okay.
Because I feel like that one that we need to up the ante. Would you rather be in a school play or be in a marching band?
Marching band all day long. I do not want to be in a school play. It's so not my thing. A school dance, a dance performance, I would be all about that. But a play, no, I would be scared the whole time.
Ensemble things where you're not the only one there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think we both know I would prefer the opposite.
Yes.
But that's why we're friends. So now that we got that done, let's discuss some common misconceptions about homeschooling. Now, I don't know about you and how I knew, and am I in this thing? Here, you lean that way. I'll lean this way. You lean more that way. More that way. I went in the same room. Okay, don't hurt your back. So how I know there's misconceptions, when I got started, homeschooling was something I thought only granola people did. Okay, so I'm so sorry.
Crunchy Mom.
Sorry, Lily. I really did. I looked at these granola women with their open-toed sandals, which I'm currently wearing. Myself, there's no way I could be like them. They're very responsible. They're very smart, and they're very wholesome. They drink lots of water. I didn't feel like I could get in there. And then I realized, well, I was in a situation where I kind of needed to rethink that. And so I realized homeschooling is not about a stereotype, but I think in my mind I was stereotyping. And I do have one more thing to throw in. I had a friend, she was looking into homeschooling and she was inquiring if I baked bread
Mm-hmm.
and wore long dresses. Because in her mind, that's what homeschooling was about, is being Amish and baking bread. Now, I was learning bread making, but not because I was homeschooling, but because I literally am addicted to bread and I believe in it. And a friend of mine had a bread maker. So I'm not like doing artisan breads. I like dresses on Sundays, but homeschooling is not just an outfit and it's not just an activity. It's, I guess, is it a lifestyle? It's what you choose to make it to be.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my misconceptions. Gwen, did you have any on your end when you got started, or something you thought homeschooling was, or maybe something you knew somebody thought homeschooling was that you had met? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the stereotype for me was that you had to have it all together. Maybe you had to have a degree. Stereotypes, okay, the kids, maybe you stay at home all day and that's all you do. It was silly things. But I ended up knowing a lot of people in the homeschool community just through our church and through our karate program that we had. So I saw that they were just normal, everyday people, and I was intrigued.
Very cool. All right, and Whitley, take us back to Moses when you were illegally teaching your children. Just a misconception before you get into the actual origin story. What were there any misconceptions you had? Because really, you were what I thought you had to be in order to do it. So, did you have any misconceptions when it came to homeschooling?
I will tell you, people threw misconceptions at me.
Oh, really?
Your kids aren't going to be socialized. They're not going to be able to like do team sports, which was totally wrong. There was just they're not going to be able to get a job. All of those things just were just really thrown at me all the time.
I was actually thinking when I was looking over my notes just now when you said that, my mother, and I love you, Mom, if you're watching over this, she had a misconception as well when I told her I was going to homeschool, because I am not your teacher, like someone maybe you would feel confident in the outcome of the education with. Anyway, she was like, well, how will your kids ever date? How will they have friends?
Yeah.
She did not see the value in it because she was looking at me and assigning what she thought I was capable of, because she didn't know what I was doing, but she was looking at the outside saying there's no way that your kids are going to get a good education as long as you're the teacher. And I think that comes from, I think, a very big worldview is unless you've gone to school and gotten a degree, you're probably not going to be as good. And there are some things, I don't want to put down anybody's profession. I think you're amazing if you choose to be a teacher. That is a hard
Absolutely.
job. And homeschooling is about getting to control the information so that and making sure your kids get a quality education. Because a lot of times when your kids are getting in school, they're one of 30. And that teacher is one person, and there's no way she can help 30 kids at the same time. A lot of times that classroom will be about what we call classroom management, and it can be hard to do. And I think all teachers should make good money for having to do what they have to do, but it's a very hard scenario. So one of the things I like about homeschooling is that it's curated to your child, so you can go at their pace. They're not having to go at what the government or the state says should be your child's pace. And they can learn at their own rate, so they don't have to be stopped by everybody in the classroom, because not everybody's on the same page of paper. That makes sense.
It did to me.
Okay. Gwen, are you there with me, girl?
I am.
All right. So, Gwen, why don't we start with you, and I'll be last. What was your reasons for homeschooling? Why did you get into it?
Well, as a Christian, for me at first, it was just totally being led to do it. I felt called to homeschool. Always wanted to be a teacher. I they were like 2 or 3 years old at the time when I made that decision. We were in our community with a karate outreach program. So we were in 6 different elementary schools doing an after school program. So we would go to 2 different schools on a Friday and then a Friday night to give us 6 through the school week. And I just saw the system, and we were in a wonderful system, pretty conservative, a lot of Christian teachers, great curriculum that was in the public schools where we were in Georgia. But there was just some things that just set off some alarms for me. And I just thought, I really don't want my children in that scenario. A lot of bullying and different things. And it was coming from some of the teachers as well. And that's not typical. You have a lot of wonderful teachers. But in the situation that I was observing, it was just something that was concerning to me, where the kids were getting labeled and they would tell the next teacher. And then the next teacher would know that this child was the troubled kid or whatever. And those were the kids we were working with in our program, and I loved them. So we wanted to homeschool. My husband supported me, and I had a huge homeschool community there, which I'd never really had anywhere else. It was huge there, and gained a lot of support. So that was my reasoning for doing it. They're my belief system as well. I wanted to disciple them and just let them have a childhood. So not that people who public school, I mean, none of this is against what people are doing in private school or public school, but at the time that was my reasoning, and it worked for us.
Perfect. Whitley, would you like to share your days back at the beginning of time that you were legally? I feel like this is the '60s. Like, I know your children, and they're not that old, but
no, she's not.
So tell us your story.
Okay, first I want to start off with my father-in-law was the president of the school board.
Oh, okay.
My brother-in-law started homeschooling his kids. It was against the law. He was arrested. We went through a court case. He had tried to keep it quiet. My father-in-law, the president of the school board.
Right.
So when he had to go to court, and we found about a roundabout way about that, and it was just very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And I never even heard of it before. It just wasn't something I even thought about. But as we were going through that, and I started learning, and then I started asking questions about this, and I'm going, you can do this. Of course, it was illegal at the time.
Right.
But the law was that your kid had to start school by the time they were 8 years old.
Yes.
Which meant that you could start in, say, kindergarten or preschool, kindergarten, and get them up through the first and second grade before they turned 8 years old.
Okay.
He lost his case.
Oh no.
He lost his case. He ended up starting, I think, a private school. But what happened was then the legislature changed the law after that.
Oh.
So therefore, when I first started out, it was illegal. But by the time my kids were older, it was legal. But we moved. And so we ended up putting the kids in a private school. And we moved again to California, and it was legal in California. You just had to.
I would just like to stop us. What isn't legal in California? Continue. Sorry.
That's right. The kids, we were moving the kids. We put the kids in a school. They were there for a year. Then we ended up moving to California. The kids were in school a year. It was really kind of hard at that point in time because we saw how the kids had already, the kids in the class had already made friends with the other kids in the class. And so it was getting kind of hard for them. They were already starting to kind of feel like they didn't belong. So we had a neighbor move in next door on post who homeschooled.
Okay.
And so we ended up starting to homeschool at the same time and together. But one thing that I learned whenever I started out homeschooling, and it was not legal, There wasn't any material whatsoever, but museums and old textbooks are wonderful.
Okay, very cool. All right, so my origin story on this actually, well, we'll go way back at the very beginning. So my kids, I had only two at the time. We did start out in school. I lived in a little town in Oklahoma, and I was a typical mom, like all moms. And I took my kids to school, and if I had have stayed, I don't know that I would have homeschooled because I really didn't at the time. It really wasn't a thing at that time when my kids were little. Well, we moved. My husband's military. We moved to Texas, and my kids again went to one of the schools that was on post, and everything was okay. But then they were, and I of course added to the family. So now we have three or four kids, and two are young. Two are going to be going into middle school at this time. So they've been within the school system, and they did well. I mean, the teachers loved it. It wasn't ever a thing. And anyway, I had a situation where my daughter was going into middle school, and they had put her out because in the government school, they only go to like sixth grade, and then they get shot out to different places around this area. And when I went to review the school, I was always an active parent in the PTA and stuff. I really wanted to be there because I do not believe, this is just me, I don't believe a school is your babysitter, and I don't want them to be more in school and with them and know them more than I do. So anytime I could be a part of something with them, I would. Well, when I went to review this school for my oldest daughter, it was really shocking. So we had to make a time, and I go and I reserve a time with this lady, and she's going to be showing me where my daughter's going to be going to school at and all this stuff. And the very first thing she says to me after she introduces herself is, she looks at the door and she's like, your job ends right there. That's as far as you're coming. It was wrong. And it set off so many alarm bells because you're absolutely wrong. My job is going right into that classroom with you. I'm the best asset that teacher's going to have. And if there's a problem, I'm going to be a part of helping figure it out if there's a problem. But my job doesn't end at the door. And when she said that, it changed everything. I had another daughter in another town, also going to another school where she was experiencing bullying. And the counselor was telling me, well, it's just because she's pretty. Okay. Yeah, that's not why we're here. And all this to say, I was not loving the new adventure of school. Now, what you don't know is I happen to meet this gal, the mother of art. And she was homeschooling. And at the time, I thought it was very unique and special. And I had another friend also who was homeschooling because her kids were in the film industry. They were taking acting classes, so they needed to have more of an open schedule. So because I was desperate, I was like, wow, they look normal. They do not look like I thought I would need to look like I mean, she looks great. I mean, hello. But I felt like it was possible. So I began my homeschooling journey there, and I was so scared because I'm thinking I'm going to fail my kids. But meeting a good homeschooling community with moms who are at different places who can help you strengthen areas that you're weak was so great for me. And I was in a place where there was a lot of grace and forgiveness. And I can tell you to this day, I did not make my children stupid. So if someone like me can do it, I would almost tell you anybody can. They really can. Okay, so we're going on to the next part of this. Whitley, why don't you handle one of our questions? Was there a challenge in your homeschooling that surprised you most when you got started?
Well, the kids were so little and they were eager to learn. And because we did do a lot, we went to the Science Museum all the time. It was just, a lot of what we did was just kids play.
It's fun. Is there anything else that surprised you as far as aside from the science museums? I mean, you really did kind of not have a border with which you were homeschooling in. So were you just like, anything works, or how did you?
Well, there's certain things that kids need to learn. And I knew from my nursing and everything, in childhood development that the best way for kids to learn is to play.
Right.
And so a lot of what we did was play. And my kids learned math by with M&Ms and Skittles and the rest of them.
I am completely for snack math.
Snack math.
So, learning to sort, you sort by the colors, you sort by shapes. And then we did addition, and you're adding different colors together. And then, of course, the most fun is subtraction.
Oh,
Because subtraction was when, okay, you've got these 5 Skittles. What happens when you eat 2?
I'd like to say everything. Fantastic.
And so, and going to the science museum, it was like concentrating on one area and letting them play until they were totally exhausted in that area, playing with the tornado machine until, they were,
they felt knowledgeable.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was absolutely a lot of play, and there was a lot of sports.
Okay.
And there was a lot of reading also, because my kids actually learned to read at a young age simply because I read to them a lot. And they caught on to what it was. And a lot of people say they're memorizing the book. Well, guess what? When they memorize the book and they sit there with the book in front of them and read the story and look at the words like you do, they learn how to read. So it's just a lot of play. Another thing I learned from a homeschool mom in California was that she didn't even start homeschooling her kids until they were 8 years old, and she had like a bajillion. She had one of the sports team families, and the reason being is, especially with the boys, was that there was a lot of things they learned in play and going outside and building roads and learning the woods, and their handwriting was so much better than most guys' handwriting. And what she had found out is that their coordination wasn't, especially for boys, their coordination wasn't quite there until they were older. So she didn't even start them writing or doing it. So if they're not writing, they're not going to be doing the workbook pages and that sort of thing. So they were learning the skills that did not involve having to do any writing. And those kids were really, really smart and did really well. So I look at it, it's a relaxing thing. You don't have to start when your kid's 3 years old.
Yeah. No, it's very true. Now, Gwen, tell me about, did you, on your homeschooling journey, did you have anything that was surprising or unique? Because we're not going to really cover so much curriculum today, but just more in your experiences that you found surprising or that you liked or disliked about the whole thing.
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind when you asked Whitley the question, it was really that I had a harder time cleaning my house or because they were with me all the time. So keeping things clean and tidy was not going to happen. The kids' toys, and we would do the cleanup songs, whatever. Barney was the thing at the time. So we would do the everybody cleanup song. When they're little bit, really just being able to do all the housework when they're little. There's things that they do that's age appropriate because you're teaching them life skills when you homeschool as well. That's what I'm hoping you're showing these kiddos too. But besides the curriculum, but really just trying to manage the house and get things done, doctor's appointments, those sort of things while you're trying to teach.
Yeah. I was going to say for me, and kind of going off of what you said, Whitley, and then of course you went to, I found that the school day, I didn't realize it was going to be so short.
Yeah.
Now, here's something you may not know. Your child is in school from, what is it? Like 7 or 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon.
Right.
It's not necessary.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you straight up. We could finish a school day between 9 and noon. So that's 3 hours. I was
going to say 3 or 4 hours a day.
But if you think about it, as long as these kids are going to school, they should be smarter than what they are. They should be doctors at the end of it because they're in school a long time. But I'll tell you why that is. It's because there's so many students, one teacher. It takes forever just to get something done. And so these kids literally are learning at a snail's pace sometimes, not all the time,
Right.
but sometimes more, depending on their situation, but than what they would be if they're at home and it's a one-on-one type of deal.
Right.
So that's something that surprised me. Also, I liked having a day where we could go participate in a sport. And it's not all shoved in a, like think about what your day, if you are in the public school experience, is like. Your child is in school all day. And then if they're in a sport, they're getting out 5, 6 o'clock at night. Then they've got
Right.
homework. How much time are you able to even spend with them? And their friends have more influence on them. Their teachers have more influence on them than anybody else does. Now, is it a
Mhm.
surprise that you're going to get the behaviors and the feelings that some of these kids are going to walk, and even the identity labeling? I didn't actually say this, but even in school when I was going, what had tipped me off to want to homeschool is people in high school label you. And you grow up with that label in your head saying to yourself, if you were not liked or you were teased, immersive,
Mhm.
how do you say that? Immersive? Tease
Immer-
hard. Because when you tease hard, when you're teased a lot, you walk around with that identity in your heart. And so if someone treats you nice, let's say you're treated badly, you're surprised and you think there's a motive and you can't believe that someone finds any value in you or would be nice to you because you think there's another shoe that's going to drop because that's what your life has been like. I sometimes it's like that. Now, not for everybody. And I don't want to, if you are doing the public school thing, that's completely fine. But for me, growing up, it was not like that. I was creative and it's not easy to be creative in a school full of very sports-minded people, and I, I, it was just hard being me. And now I will tell you, all those things grew to make me better and able to take some of the disappointment. So I'm not fragile when it comes to rejection as far as no's go, because I
Mhm.
do act, I do audition, so I get it. But I wanted my children not to be labeled in their lives so that when they go to college, they're not carrying around someone's identity that was placed on them because they were being a jerk that day. And I'll tell you, so when they did finally go to college, they didn't have any of that immersive, that hard teasing. They didn't have that. They went with an enjoyment. They didn't understand the whole thing of like why I had to wear a certain brand of clothing. They weren't brand based. They just really enjoyed learning. And good on them because that's what it should be about. But in school, it becomes about the group you're with or the clothes you wear or you're labeled by your beauty, by your intellect. And I wasn't raising for that. I was raising for character. And so with homeschooling, you can
Mhm.
change how your outcomes. It doesn't have to be, I mean, good if your children are beautiful, and if you're beautiful, I love it, but that should not be all you are. And great if you have a good mind, but that shouldn't be all you are because your mind can actually make you stumble, and I've seen it a lot. I actually want to raise an average kid who can just be a good person and make a difference in our community. I believe average people will if they're led in a way where they can have confidence in themselves. It's okay to be okay and not have to be like stunningly beautiful or, Elon Musk smart. So, and if you are, let me just say, I hope that isn't put down to you. Good on you. I wasn't blessed in that area, but
Oh,
I did
yes, you
really
were.
strive. Huh? What'd you say,
I
Gwen?
said, yes, you were. You're like the word wizard.
I am until I'm tongue tied in front of y'all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think when you're going to school your children, just be prayerful about it. And regardless of what environment you choose to put them in, they're going to do fine, but you just want to stay connected with them. And the reasonings why we chose to do it had to do with what we were seeing, either from experiences that we personally had or within the community that we were living in. I'll digress, but that's just something I wanted to share. Was it's good for kids to have time to play. And I was thinking about this too. Was why are we raising our children at 4 to have to know all this stuff? Why is there this agenda? And if you are someone who knows that, let me know, because is it so that they can be in a school from 4 years old till they're, that's, think about it, that's a lifetime of schooling. And maybe what they need to be doing is just learning outside and doing all those things, playing. Because if you think about it, if you look at schools today, they're run like military camps. Especially in the elementary, your hands are behind the back, you're looking for it. And trust me, I've been to them. That's what they were doing because they need to control the group. Your playtime is not really playtime. You get a ball and a metal jungle gym, and there you go. I mean, seriously, prisons have a better landscape than we do. But maybe we ought to look at that. Now I'm just putting it out there. We can discuss that in the questions. Okay, so moving on.
Look, can I add real quick
Yes,
to that?
please.
The thing too is homeschooling. What's good about that is, unlike some school systems, school does not start and stop at the door. You can
Yeah.
homeschool, use your curriculum, depending on their age when you're using actual curriculum. You can do that for 2 or 3 hours, but then when school time stops, okay, they're going outside and exploring. They're helping you cook, bake a cake. So then there's chemistry and there's science and there's all sorts of things there.
Yeah,
So
or
you're
life
doing
support.
school all the time, bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Dad would read the bedtime stories. Sometimes it was a book I couldn't get to that day.
Yeah.
So then that would be that again is school. So
So
school
smart.
is throughout the whole day, especially when they're little. I
Yeah.
love elementary.
I was going to say you could even vacation in school. Like school doesn't
Yeah.
have set holidays.
Right.
It can work around moves. It can work in the
Yes.
summer. It's got a lot of freedom to it, so you're not bound to
Right.
a school calendar year if you don't want to
Right.
be.
And I
Right.
found the kids learned more when we were on vacation. And it as far as geography, as far as culture,
Yes.
as far as all of those things were concerned, they learned a whole lot more. But I do want to add one thing.
All right, one
because-
thing. And
one
one of
thing.
the questions.
Okay. Whenever one of my daughters went to college and she was talking to a counselor and they asked her what she wanted her major to be, when she told them, they were like, "Oh, well, have you been studying this or blah blah blah?" And she goes, "No." And they go, "Why do you want to major in this?" And she said, "Because I don't know anything about it and I want to learn."
Ah.
It absolutely shocked her counselor because she said kids come into college and they've made all of these decisions and they're not trying to learn anything new. They're trying to just get through.
Very true. All right, so we're going to do a little Q&A. And Whitley, we will start with you. You get 10 seconds to answer it. And if you don't get done in 10 seconds, buzzer time. Okay. So Whitley, I don't actually think this is a fair question for you.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously you did a good job at this, but I'll ask it nonetheless. How do you keep your kids motivated? Now, that's one of the things that I'm sure our viewers would like to know because maybe they have a child that just isn't into the school system at all, doesn't want to learn. So how do you motivate them?
I'm really not sure because my kids seem to be very motivated.
Okay.
They may not like everything, especially when they all took music lessons, and that wasn't always their favorite thing. But it was one of the things I said. This is after you learn this particular thing, especially like music.
Okay.
You're going to reach this level, and when you reach this level, you never have to do it again. And they worked really hard to reach that level. But it just like music, I wanted them to study music when they were younger or a sport or any of these other things. And I really could care less whether they went on with the rest of their life with it.
Okay.
But they were introduced to it. So and they had the skills. So the memory would come back.
Right.
If they were an adult and decided they wanted to do it, then they had the background for it.
Okay.
And I think because I wasn't forcing them to do a lot of things.
Gwen, same question to you. You've had multiple kids. And what do you do when one of your children just isn't motivated to do the subject you're trying to teach? What's your ways of helping motivate?
I like what Whitley said, pretty much giving them a goal. Like we're going to at least work to this level. There were things like that I did, and it wasn't specific. It was specific to a particular child, not to all of them. So it just depended on the kid and depended on the subject. If they weren't motivated to do math, that was probably going to be the first thing that we did. And I would have to stay on them to do it every single day because math, you can't progress until you've done a certain level. So and you can't get behind on that. And the thing was, it was probably laziness, and not so much I couldn't learn it or, saying for the kid, from the kid's perspective, they could
Yeah.
definitely learn it and know how to do it. It was just laziness. I've got one kid in mind,
Yeah.
but yeah, so just really staying on them with the hard subjects, doing them first, and then getting help, maybe even a different curriculum if it's really a struggle.
There's nothing more for me to add on that one. I completely agree. I was just thinking about that too. Is it just depends on if it's something that they're just tired, they're lazy, or maybe
Right.
it's something that's really hard.
Right.
Um, this is where I go outside my circle and I will go get a
Mhm.
tutor. And
Right.
I will do things that are aimed to kind of help make it easier so they will not
Mhm.
feel
Right.
like they're not going to get it. I'm not going to leave them there, is what I think I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I meet people, and it'll be different moms, they all have different ways of going about it.
Yes.
Sometimes there are parents that do not do homeschool. They just don't want to take their kids to school or whatever. That's their
Oh,
reasoning.
yeah.
But they just kind of leave it up to nature to teach their kids. And you really wish you wouldn't do that. But I do think you shouldn't leave your child in a place of where they're not succeeding. So if
Mhm.
you can't do it, you may not be the
Right.
answer in this one. You may have to go outside
Right.
yourself and your home and look for someone who can
Mhm.
help you. All right. So Gwen, here's another question for you. What about teaching subjects? So for those of you that are new, you might be intimidated by this, but Gwen, what about teaching subjects you don't know well? Like for example, a science, or let's say you were a history buff or whatever, or English. Like how do you teach subjects you don't know well?
Well, you said it earlier, get a tutor. Tutor,
Yeah.
a co-op, and a
Uh-huh.
co-op is a situation where we all volunteer or sometimes we pay. It depends on where the co-op is. The
Right.
last co-op we were involved with, we paid the teachers every month during the school year, and they taught a particular subject that you signed your child up for. So it
Oh,
could have
nice.
been chemistry or biology. My youngest did that. And I could have done those things, but it was nice for her to do that in a group setting with other homeschoolers and then have a teacher who had a passion for that and could teach really well. And for math, I also outsourced that. Well,
Uh-huh.
up to a certain level, I did it. But then in high school, I got a tutor and they did really well. I
Yeah.
just wanted mine to have confidence so that they knew they could do it. And they did really well with math. Even my others going into college or trade school, they scored really high in the subjects that we got people
You know,
from other places to help with.
yeah. I 100% agree. That's what I did too. In our co-op, we had a wonderful woman who I will not mention, but she'll know who she is. She taught an amazing science class. Now, even though I said I would do science experiments, I don't think anybody wants me to really do a science experiment. But that's one thing that your children need to know how to do, especially when they get in high school. They're going to do dissections and all sorts of
Hmm.
stuff. And
Hmm.
that's what she would cover in our co-op, which
Right.
was perfect. So they would get someone who actually enjoyed it. I didn't have to learn as I go.
Yeah.
And they're getting it from a really great mind. I felt so blessed to be able to have my children under her tutelage to learn stuff. And she
Right.
did and they were always excited to go to class.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would have been excited if I was, you know, kind of learning as I went. Grab the beaker, kids, and you know, because yeah, not a big fan of science. It was not my thing. Whitley, did you ever have a subject that you didn't know how to teach? Never mind. Whitley is brilliant, and we'll move on. No kidding. Did you? Okay, Whitley. How do you balance homeschooling and work? Have you ever had to do that?
Most of the time when I homeschooled, especially when the military was having us move every
Right.
year or two,
Hmm.
I mainly just taught and I didn't work outside.
Yes.
As the kids got older, and especially the time period you were talking about when we met, then our kids started acting,
Right.
and
Right.
then we were managers,
Right. Right. Right.
and we were busy doing taking them to auditions and to shoots and
Right.
and doing all of that. You had the dinner theater,
Uh huh.
um, and so we made whatever it was that we wanted to do work. Because just like what you said, when you're one-on-one teaching, even though you have multiple kids, you're still one-on-one. Uh, they finish a whole lot faster. They learn a whole lot more,
Yeah.
and you have
Mm-hmm.
more time. And if you're teaching them those life skills to where they are doing their own laundry and they're taking care of themselves and
Yes.
the animals and that sort of thing, you do have the freedom to pursue other things. And
Right.
most of the time, like I started writing
Uh-huh.
and I did a little producing and that sort of thing. And I did it when my kids were home.
Well, that is beautiful. Gwen, same back to you. How did you juggle, just how did you handle homeschooling and anything extracurricular that you had going on with your life?
Well, again, moving around with the military. At first, when we were homeschooling, we had our own business, so it worked out for us.
Yes.
And of course, you're just taking your kids in tow. I had 4, so they were going everywhere with me.
Right.
All the activities. There's just a lot of support that we had in the community, wherever we went, particularly too in the military community.
Yeah.
But I did volunteer a lot. I volunteered with
Yeah.
PWC, which is Protestant Women of the Chapel. I was on the board and did that,
Right.
and that worked out because we had childcare.
You're great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all
thank
we know,
you.
by the way. Wanted to know.
That's what I thought you were going to say. And I was like, yeah, thank you.
No, but you
um,
were great. I was in her class.
you're so sweet. No, I loved it. So I enjoyed that, and I volunteered in military organizations as well. Right now, because I'm in a life situation that I didn't think I would be in, I do have to work full time. So my daughter, for the first time, is in 10th grade in high school in a public
Right.
school system. And thankfully, we're in a small town,
Yeah.
conservative town, a predominant Christian viewpoint here in the state that we're in. And she's got a great group of friends and some really good teachers. The schoolwork, I mean, thankfully, it's not difficult for her.
Yeah.
And she's enjoying it, but it is a really long day. So there was some getting used to. So being able to balance the two, I wasn't going to be able to homeschool and go to work. So this would be the first year that I'm not homeschooling because she's my
Yeah.
youngest. So it's just interesting, but God has definitely blessed us and blessed her, and it helps me not feel a certain way. I'm
You
happy.
know, I would say the bright side.
Yeah,
A positive aspect on this, because there's nothing wrong if you want to put your kids back into school. I had a
right,
check system for myself that if my kids didn't do well,
right.
we would test every year. If they didn't do well, I felt like
Hmm.
I wasn't doing my job, not that they didn't do theirs. I would have absolutely put my kids back in school. But in a situation like what you're talking about, a positive, Gwen, is that you had so much time with her. She's not
Yeah.
going into that place not knowing and being affirmed of who
Hmm.
she is.
Right.
She's unlike all those other students who have
Hmm.
only known that. She knew very much so who she is, had confidence in that, and
Hmm.
has walked at it. And that's a good thing. Sometimes, if you have to do that, they get to be a standout in their class because they're not falling prey to some of the
Right.
things that kids who kind of get labeled early on might have to deal
Hmm.
with. So I'm
Right.
so glad
Yeah,
that,
she's doing great. I'm proud of
yeah,
her. She's done
I
really,
know
really well.
she's done a lot. Okay, so Whitley, you reminded me that I had a past. I forgot all about it. So one of the things that work and homeschool, I've seen friends try to do college and homeschool, and I can tell you that doesn't
Yeah,
work well
that's so
because
hard.
you've got to figure out how to do it. Your kids can somewhat teach themselves in some things, but they really do need to have you there. And so you're either going to give to yourself or you're going to give to them. And that's my personal opinion on it. But with that said, I did have a dinner theater because I'm a creative person. Remember, I mentioned that. And I loved theater, I loved acting. And I had the pleasure when I was in Oklahoma to be a part of a really great dinner theater, and I loved it. Well, when I moved to Texas, those opportunities just weren't there, and I felt like
Hmm.
creatively, I'm suffering. Like I had all my children in school at the time, and I was doing some acting lessons and stuff. But when I decided to homeschool, it really grounded me because now I've got to do better at getting their school stuff together and focusing there. But what I ended up doing is they became involved in my business. So for dinner
Mhm.
theater, like we would do decorations, we would decorate the tables, come up with paperwork and stuff. And it showed them how to be organized and they would help me set up or prep what I needed to take and pack what I needed to take before I went. So they're getting to see how to execute something like a goal. So if you're looking at running your own business, it's not I showed up and I made money out of the air today. There was a lot of steps involved and they could see it. And I could leave them with a task and know that it's going to get done because they know what they're
Mhm.
doing. So it was fun. And no, I did not do child labor and just like, no. But if we're like cutting out things or printing things or folding things, it always helped me fold uh,
Right.
my playbills and all that. They were just awesome. And I really appreciated all the help. And they were absolutely rewarded with many a treat. Many. It was the subtraction method of yes. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. All right. So before we close, is there any thoughts you have? Final thoughts for our homeschooling community that you'd like to leave with them before we get back together for section 2?
Final thoughts would be to not get overwhelmed. If you want to homeschool, find somebody that you trust because it can be incredibly overwhelming. Unlike Whitley, when she started out, there was not any curriculums out there. Now there's an overwhelming amount
Yeah.
of curriculum. And so find somebody that's knowledgeable, just be encouraged and know that you'll find somebody that can help you narrow down your style, what you're looking for, how you want things to look at home with your schooling, and just do some research. Just try
Yeah.
not to be overwhelmed. So that's what I would say.
You know what? Words out of my mouth. I love it. Okay, Whitley, what do you think?
I have to ditto that because that is the key thing is don't get overwhelmed. Just if you're tense and scared, the kids are going to pick up on that. But if you're having fun and learning along with them, then it's fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
And they pick up on that, and it gives them a sense of wanting to learn. Um, just like when your kid's working and helping you build a business, that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's very enjoyable, and they had a good time with it. Um, and it wasn't, yeah, there was stress with the deadlines, but it can be overwhelming unless you just let it. And there is a ton of resources out there.
They're totally,
Mhm.
and I will just say, in addition to that, is don't beat yourself up. I think
Yeah.
for the
Right.
first year, I went back and forth with, was this a good idea? This is hard. I don't know that I like these humans right now. Uh,
Like you
and
sound like the lady on Tangled or
yeah,
whatever.
it
Yeah.
was, it was. Also, don't compare.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Mhm.
big thing.
Absolutely.
You're going to look at someone and say, they've got it way more together. I'm such a failure at it. I mean, these things might come through your head, and
Mhm.
you really shouldn't compare yourself. Just like you're starting out and have some grace. Um, I managed my school year kind of like the school did because I felt comfortable with that. So we would start at the time that school started,
Right.
and I would teach similar subjects because I felt good about those subjects. So they would have all the same things that everybody else would have, but I would get to be more creative in that situation. We just end earlier and we just have more time to do more fun. And that worked for me. Don't beat yourself up and think that because let's say a curriculum didn't work out, you just screwed it all up. It's just done. Your children are very resilient and they're incredible learners, and they can survive you on all your stupid. I can
Yes.
attest to that. And we'll get more into that on section 2, where we're going to dive. I like to say deep dive, but will it? I don't know. But we're going to deep dive into our curriculum and what our homeschool day looked like and our resources. So on our next show, that's what we're going to kind of focus in on is what we did for curriculum, things you can do to kind of help your homeschool and all that good stuff. But until next time, thank you so much for joining us on The Happenings. We'll see you later. Bye.
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 Bye.